Hey, Heinz, what are you up to today, man?
Just the usual stuff. Just on a podcast right now. Just talking through different things. I'm kind of excited for this podcast, though. I don't know about you, but this is actually we're gonna do number 11 through 15 on the top 20 albums of all time, right?
Yeah, for sure. Yeah, and we're starting to get into some a really good. I'm not to say that there weren't good ones in the last episode. There were. I can't even remember what they are right now. Do you remember what they are?
Yeah, I can't remember the names of the album. Are you talking about the last episode, right?
Yeah, the last album episode we did.
It was we had Bob Dylan was in there, and I can't remember what one it was. Number 20 was Radiohead. Okay,
Oh yeah,
computer.
yeah,
19, Led Zeppelin 4. Bob Dylan, the one I brought up, Blonde on Blonde.
yeah.
17 was Nirvana, Nevermind. And then another Bob Dylan, number 16, Blood on the Tracks. Kind of a gruesome title, really, when you think about it.
Yeah, it really is. Really is. I always want to call it I think Michael Jackson released an album in the 90s called Blood on the Dance Floor. That's what I always want to call that Bob Dylan one, but Bob's not really
Very
putting out dance music.
no, but he's got a lot of albums out there. I
Holy
mean,
cow.
he's got to average one a year, and he's still going, if I remember right.
Yep, he's still crushing it. So,
Yeah, yeah,
should we just get right into it? Should we hit the music and come back and talk about music?
yes, absolutely.
All right. Well, here we go. All right, we are back from the music, and today we are going through the next five of our top 20 albums provided to us by just a random website.
And we won't even list it because we don't know what one it was.
Yeah, we don't know what it's called. We just have a picture of it.
Hmm.
So we're doing albums 15 through 11, and we'll start with number 15 today. And that is Elvis Presley, The Sun Sessions from 1976. What'd you think of this album, Heinz?
I actually thought, and this is something I've never really listened to Elvis. I think everybody knows a few of his songs,
Uh-huh.
but this was incredibly good. Just
Yeah.
something new, something that you don't normally listen to. And it was really, really good. And I was completely amazed. This was like his first attempt at a studio album before he signed with, and I can't remember who his big record label he signed with,
Uh-huh.
but this was just like a local studio, and it was all made in the like 1954 and 1955,
Yep.
and it sounds incredible.
Yeah.
Just
It's
everything he did was just awesome on this album.
Yeah, for sure. Yeah, it was recorded in 1954 and 1955, a bunch of songs, but it actually wasn't released as an album until 1976. That was kind of cool. And they call it the Sun Sessions because it was recorded at Sun Records, a studio in Memphis, Tennessee, and it's where tons of people got their start. People like Roy Orbison, who did Pretty Woman,
Yep.
and Jerry Lee Lewis and Carl Perkins and the Man in Black, Johnny Cash. Like if you've seen the movie Walk the Line about Johnny Cash, where at the beginning he goes into a studio in Memphis, that's Sun. That's where like all these people got their start. And so yeah, it's just you think of Elvis Presley, you think of with his white suit with all the shiny stuff on it and his
Hmm.
Vegas era type thing.
Sequins.
But
Yeah.
yeah, but this is 50s rock and roll. It's really good. It's really solid.
Yeah. My two favorite songs on there, and I think they're probably the most popular ones, were Mystery Train and That's All Right. And it really showed how good of like vocals Elvis had and how he had that style to him
Yeah,
that I think was really captured in these recordings, and you kind of missed it. It was still there in his later albums and some of his really, really popular stuff, but this was just really like soulful, good
yeah,
rock and roll.
Yeah, it's good. My favorite track is called Blue Moon of Kentucky. I've known
Hmm.
that song. That's like one of the few Elvis songs that I've known for years and years, and now I know a bunch more. So yeah, that one's really cool. And I was never really growing up. I never got into Elvis. I got into tons of classic rock stuff from past generations, but I never really got out into Elvis. But I'm just
Mm.
gonna say, I'm just calling it today. Elvis Presley kind of wails. Like I kind of get why he's called the king.
And I was really excited about talking about this album because I'm going out on a the edge here and just saying I think everyone should actually listen to this album because it's so old, so to speak. I mean, it's stuff from the mid '50s, but it actually is really, really good, like in today's music scene.
Yeah,
Like I think you could play this at a lot of different like bars or restaurants or whatever, and people wouldn't necessarily know who it was, but they'd be like, "Man, this is actually pretty good. Who is this?"
right. Yeah. It's from the 50s and it holds up, 70 years later. Awesome.
Yeah,
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 that's why he's a king.
yeah. And one side note, my high school track coach was actually in the army in the same unit as Elvis was
Oh,
way
wow.
back in the day. Yeah,
Huh.
yeah. And the
That's
only
pretty cool.
story I can remember that from him telling us is that Elvis refused to play or sing for anybody because he said if he did that, he'd have to do that for every single person, and he
Yep.
just wasn't going to do it.
Yeah. I totally get that. Like, yeah, I don't want to either. For sure.
Yeah, yeah.
For sure. All right. Let's move on to number 14 by another huge, huge band from Britain. It's the Rolling Stones, Exile on Main Street. I know this was the Stones' 12th studio album, and it came out in 1972. Like, and they really didn't start playing as a band until the what was it, the mid 60s or something
Hmm.
like that.
Roughly, yeah.
Um, so to have this be their 12th album in such a short amount of time, they just churned out the music. It is crazy.
And this was just one of those great 1970s rock and roll albums
Uh
that
huh.
you could tell it brought on a lot of different like rock and roll styles and even rock and roll vibes. Like it didn't the whole album when you listen through it from beginning to end, every song changes. It's just not the same style throughout. And I was surprised because I when I listened to these albums, I just hit play first track and let it go. I was totally expecting to hear a lot of their big name songs.
Uh huh.
And there's some big songs on here, but a lot of these, when I kind of read into it a little bit more, these are more concert staples, like staples they always play at their concerts,
Yeah.
but not necessarily like the big commercial successes like some of the other ones they have. So I thought it's a really good album.
Yeah, it's fantastic. The I think it's track number 2 is my favorite song. It's called "Rip This Joint," and
Hmm.
it's just hardcore blues with an super edge. Like it teeters on like almost kind of like punk rock vibes, and it's
Hmm.
just that song. Just like it says, "Rip This Joint." It rips, man. Like, oh, it is so insanely good.
It's a great album. Tumbling Dice for me was the one that had that '70s rock vibe that I like, what I
Okay.
really like from that era. But Sweet Virginia, it was one of my absolute favorites because it has the vocals in there with the backup vocal echo. That's just like a unique style that I didn't expect from an album from the early '70s, but it just sounded awesome.
Yep.
Does does Keith Richards? Oh, sorry. Does Keith Richards does he know his way around a guitar or not?
Yeah, he kind of does. He
Okay,
knows what's up. He knows what's
that's what
going
I
on.
thought.
So for me, in addition to "Rip This Joint," my other favorite song on there is the tune called "Loving Cup." I heard another band. I think it was the band Fish. It was the first time I heard them play or heard this song was a cover of it. And I was like, "That's not a Fish song. Who is it?" And I looked it up, and it's the Stones. And so, yeah, it's kind of cool. It's kind of ballady, but kind of has an edge with like piano and stuff. But it has a lot of energy. Super rad song. Definitely go check out this album. You will be very pleased.
We should have been rating these albums as it went through.
Oh
Maybe at
yeah.
the end we'll have to give them our own special ratings.
Okay. So we're gonna go on to number 13 right now, and we're gonna get the if the Rolling Stones are the Yankees, this other band is the Red Sox. People are very they go. toe. Oh, which band is better, the Stones or the Beatles? The Stones or the Beatles? And to me, it's a weird comparison because they're two very, very different bands. It's just because they were out of the same era and came from the same country that people have to, create a debate. But
Mhm.
again, super different bands. So number 13 is the Beatles' White Album, the big double album that has 30 some songs in it
A
or
lot.
something like that. Yeah. For
And
me, oh, go ahead. Go ahead.
I was just going to say, this is our first Beatles entry in the top 20 albums, and it is not our last.
Yeah. There's a lot more to go, you guys, which is fine with me because the Beatles are my number one band of all time and a lot of people's number one band of all time. I don't get it when I have people say like, "Oh, I don't really like the Beatles. Like, I don't get what all the hype is about." And like, well, have you ever listened to a Beatles album? It'll blow your mind.
Yeah, yeah. And I'm sort of one of those guys. I don't dislike the Beatles, but I'm not like a diehard Beatles. And the two albums that are coming up, they're in the top 5. I've listened to multiple times. It's good. It's really good. But this album, the White Album, actually threw me for a loop because I was so used to a certain style of Beatles,
Uh-huh.
track and even album. I think this one is just a different vibe, a different style than a lot of their other Beatles albums, and I liked it. I think I liked this one the most of kind of the big 3 or 4 Beatles albums.
Yeah, yeah, for sure. This one, from one song to the next, each song is almost like a different genre of music.
Mhm.
They even have some weird, trippy avant-garde songs in there, like Revolution 9. It's what is going on here? And there's a lot of huge hits from this album. Like everyone knows the song Blackbird, and everyone knows Obla Di, Obla Da, Life Goes On. Um,
That was a great song. I was not expecting that when that came up. I had no idea that was the Beatles. No idea. And I was
really?
even more surprised. I figured out how to actually spell the Obladi Oblada, which was kind of fun when you look at the titles and you're like, oh my god, this is that song, like the
This is
Life Goes
oh
On
yeah.
song.
Yeah.
Facts of Life, I think, was the TV show that had it as theme song. I think. And I was like, wow, I was totally not expecting that one to pop up.
Yeah, yeah, it's such a good album. My favorite tracks are kind of off the beaten path tracks. There's one called "Happiness Is a Warm Gun." I think it's a very political song, potentially. What I meant to say is, I don't know if that's accurate.
Mhm.
And then the other song is called "Cry Baby Cry." I've listened to that song. It's it's in my top 5 Beatles songs of all time. I'll just leave it out there. So go check out those tunes. Really good.
I was super impressed by While My Guitar Weeps and
Uh
then
huh.
Blackbird. I mean, that's a great song. I mean, special song with, lyrics, the style, the composure of it. Like I really like what they had going on the White Album. I really liked it.
Yeah, it's a vibe and it's a good one.
Hmm.
Nice. All right, let's move on to number 12. And this one comes from Mr. Marvin Gaye, and that is the album What's Going On from 1971. This was his 11th album. And what I read about it is that it's a concept album that's taken from the point of view of a Vietnam veteran coming home from war and just all the like hatred and injustice that that person is facing. So that's kind of cool. I didn't know that this was a concept album. Yeah.
Yeah, I listened through it beginning to end, and I really paid attention to the lyrics when I listened to it the first time. And I'm like, God, this guy is really touching on these in these songs. He's really touching on a lot of things that were like big at the time. Then I did like every good researcher does. After I listened to it, I got on Wikipedia, and boom, that was like the first thing I came across was like he had a theme, a concept to this album,
Yeah.
and a lot of the um, tracks actually referenced, it was supposed to be the peace song, the ecology song, a lot of
Yeah.
things about the environment and things like that. And I thought that was really cool. And another cool concept that they came out with on this album, it was the first album to use Song Cycle, which gets used a lot nowadays. But that's where each song basically segued into the next one.
Uh huh.
And you can kind of tell, if you play it the whole way through, the breaks and everything kind of just match right in. You just really never notice a lot of the
Right.
changes between songs, different things like that. So it's pretty cool.
It is really cool. And coming from a musician, like it takes a lot of intricate planning to make something like that happen. I'm far too lazy to do that, but it is such a cool effect if you can pull it off and pull it off well. He clearly did. And a little side fact is we didn't get this list from Rolling Stone, but Rolling Stone, on their list of the top 200 albums of all time, this is their number one.
Mm-hmm.
So, for all you listeners out there, Rolling Stone kind of they know music pretty well, and if they're claiming it's number one, it's definitely worth your time checking out. So go check it out.
They've been around for a little while, and I didn't realize how great a singer Marvin Gaye is,
Oh yeah, he's so good.
and how many of the tracks from the album have been popularized as theme songs and even in commercials.
Yeah.
Because the title track, "What's Going On," is, I listened to that like 7 times over. It is absolutely fabulous. It is
Uh-huh.
just like his singing, the instrumental, everything is just awesome. And then it goes right into "What's Happening, Brother," which is another like just
Yeah.
classic song that you don't necessarily, if you're not a Marvin Gaye fan, you might not connect that that's him, but it's like you know the words of the song because you've heard it elsewhere. Same thing with
Yeah.
"Mercy Me," "Mercy, Mercy Me." It's just awesome.
Yeah. Yeah. It's so sad that he died so young. He died at the age of 44 in just like a tragic accident. It's so crazy. Do you know how he died?
No, I didn't hear this.
Oh my God, it's so sad. He was at his parents' house and he had given his dad a gun as like a way to, protect the house, like
Mm-hmm.
a pistol of some sort. And so he was at his parents' house, staying there for a weekend or something like that. And his parents got into an argument and he had to separate them. And they separated it fine or whatever. And then a few hours later, the same argument arose and Marvin got into it. And his dad walked to his room, pulled out the gun, and walked up to Marvin and shot him in the chest. And then shot him once again in the arm. And he was pronounced dead by the time paramedics got there. So his
Oof.
dad shot and murdered him.
Yes.
Isn't that
Yeah.
crazy?
Especially considering he gave him said gun that was used.
Right.
That's
Yeah.
even, yeah. God, that is too bad.
It's really sad. Okay, well let's go back on the happiness train and go
On,
to
on,
another
a, on
good
a lighter
album.
note, the album is spectacular. So keep
Yes.
him and remember him by listening to the album "What's Going On," especially if you've never listened to a true solo album beginning to end. I think this is the one to
Yeah,
listen to.
for sure. For sure. Definitely. All right, that brings us to number 11. And who is it? Who? Oh, it's the
Yeah, I
Who.
wonder who. Oh, yeah. No, Jake. Who's next?
Oh, who's next? Oh, I don't know.
Wait,
Who is next?
I think it's the Who. Who's next?
Oh, okay. I'm
That's
with
the
you. I'm
album
with you.
title. Yeah,
Okay.
yeah.
All right. So this one is from 1971, and this was the Who's fifth album. And so they kind of come from that same, and they're also from Britain, just like the Beatles and the Stones. And I've met quite a few people that, when you ask the question, do you like the Stones or the Beatles better? And sometimes people throw you a curveball. I'm like, I'm a Who fan. Like, oh, okay.
That's me. That's
That's
me.
you?
I
That's
love the
you?
Who. I
You love the
love the
Who?
Who. Yeah,
Okay.
yeah.
I like to give the bass player a little bit of love, but the bass player from the Who is named John Entwistle, who died a few years back. But he is my number one favorite bass player of all time. That guy can play that instrument like just listen to those bass lines in Who songs like boom, 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 boom. He is so insanely good, so good. Keith Moon, the drummer, was like I think that's who the Muppets modeled Animal, the drummer, off of was Keith Moon because
Yep.
Keith Moon was just super duper crazy, and you know everyone knows Robert Daltrey and of course Pete Townsend, who's famous for doing the whole windmill guitar thing. What do you like about this album?
Well, when you start off with Bobo O'Reilly,
Yeah,
it's pretty much. I mean, you're starting strong. You're starting
yeah,
strong, and the album never really drops off. If you ask me, beginning to
right,
end, every track is absolutely superb, and you can listen to the entire album beginning to end and just be amazed at everything you hear the whole way through. It's just one of those albums. I might do it tonight. You just start it, sit there, no TV on, nothing like that, and you just chill and you listen to it and you're like, yeah, it puts you in a good mood. But I love it. It's great.
I think, in some of the albums that we've talked about already, there's some songs in there that have been fairly iconic. Like there's some really good stuff on the Nirvana album and some of the Beatles one. But of all the, these 10 albums that we've talked about so far, Baba O'Riley, everyone knows when that little synthesizer starts,
With the
that
piano.
There's some piano and then a guitar coming in going down, down, down. Like it's one of the most iconic things in the history of rock and roll music. There's maybe a couple other songs that exist out there that are more recognizable, but everybody knows Baba O'Riley.
Absolutely. There's 2 other tracks on this one. One of them is my favorite Who song, and it's Won't Get Fooled Until the End. I just love that song.
Is that Won't Get Fooled Again? Isn't that what that's called?
I thought it was Until the End. Either way, yeah. What I meant to say was we won't get fooled, and we did get fooled there. But yeah, it's one of my favorites. Behind Blue Eyes is also great, and it's been covered so many times.
Many times.
but the tempo picking up throughout the song is absolutely legendary. It's just it's awesome. Just a great album that, again, you gotta listen to it, because if you like rock and roll, if you like music in general, Who's Next is definitely an album you gotta listen to.
Yeah, for sure. Fantastic band, fantastic album. All right, so let's recap 15 through 20. At number 15, we had Elvis Presley, The Sun Sessions. Number 14, we had the Rolling Stones, Exile on Main Street. 13 was the Beatles' White Album. 12 was Marvin Gaye, What's Going On? And number 11 was The Who, Who's Next? So you got some listening to do, folks. Check these out. You will be pleased that you did.
The best advice that we can ever give on this podcast is take a listen to these 5 albums, and we'll be back probably in a couple of episodes to give you the rest of the top 10, or I should say the top 10, which I have a feeling is going to get really, really good, because if these are 11 through 15, Jake, the top 10 has got to be just unbelievable.
Yeah, we're going to get into some juicy stuff, y'all.
Yeah, can't wait.
Awesome. All right, well, until we're back next time, have a safe, happy week, and we will check you all later. Bye.
Bye.